Thought I'd do a talk and sort of break into about three or four sections. A, to stop you getting bored, and B, because it sort of drops into some logical groups. I think the first thing I'd do, thinking about SMEs, is establish some bona fides so you can see exactly my experiences and where I come to with this. But then, so the three blocks are NIHR. If you want to understand how to get funding, you've got to understand the organization. So I thought I'd walk you through what an organization looks like and what are our aims. The next block really is if you were sitting here about 2nd of February after we take 2nd of January after we taken New Year's Day off, and you were thinking ahead to 2026, what would be the priorities and what would be the aims of NIHR? Then I'd probably come up with these things which are top of the list, certainly on the innovation side. So I was going to walk you through what 2026 looks like as well from the innovations. Then just sitting back and reflecting, and I'll explain sort of my background, but I've been running the I4I program now for just coming up to 5 years and the SBRI program as well. And if I was reflecting back on what good looks like and also what bad looks like, then there's some lessons in there I thought I'd just point you towards, which are my personal reflections. So the first bit is like corporate NIHR. The second bit is 2026, looking to the future, where we're going. And then just sort of the reflective bit. So if everybody's happy with that, that's how I was going to structure it. Questions and answers. I was going to try and leave a little bit of time at the end to do some questions. A, because you don't want to hear me droning on for about an hour, but it just give you a chance to ask some pointed questions as well, if that's going to be okay. So, having said all that, let's crack on. Um, you can see here there's a few bits for the background really, and there's nice little things there. These are called Borromean rings, and they're sort of interlocking rings. And my experiences comes from about three different things. The first one is sort of I'm going to take the red ring first. Um, I'm academic at the University of Birmingham, which is where I was yesterday, and I teach there on life science innovation and also been instrumental in helping build something called the Birmingham Health Innovation Campus, which is a place where we've got about 160,000 square feet of building, and it is primarily there to help entrepreneurs, SMEs, HEIs, or anybody else who is an innovator find space, have the tools, and have the ability to expand, to land, expand, to get bigger. And it's part of a larger campus or a larger park with 7 buildings with about 1 million square feet of lab space, clean room space, robot space, 3D printing, etc. And so that's the academic side. And I also work on with the providers as well. Birmingham Health Partners is the grouping of all the hospitals, everything from orthopedic to children's to women's to the UHB University Hospitals Birmingham. That's all the provider side of things, plus but also goes out into the community as well with Birmingham and Solihull GPs. So that's the sort of red ring. I don't know why I gave them these colors, but anyway, that's the red ring, which is the academic side. So it's a lot about where the innovations come from. The middle bit, and we'll take the green ring now. I do run the SBRI program, Small Business Research for Health program, which is the program that was run by NHS. And we haven't really mentioned this a little bit, but SBRI is one of those programs that's worth keeping an eye out. It wasn't doing a lot of funding in 2025, 2026. Prior to that, it was running competitions on cancer for SMEs primarily, but it could be making a return in 2026, 2027. I'm talking financial years here. So SBRI is an interesting program, one worth keeping an eye out for. The I4I program, as we've talked a little bit about here, and it's interesting to see some of the comments in your chat and your poll about which competitions you've gone for and which competitions you've been successful in. And it was good to see things like the FAST program in there, which is one of the programs we came up with in response to my Vice Chancellor, Adam Tickell at the University of Birmingham. He was trying to work out why it's so bureaucratic to get funding for innovations. So we came up with a FAST program, and I was with some colleagues from other parts of government, namely defence, yesterday, and we were talking about how they can adopt some of the methods of FAST funding into MOD procurement. And the FAST program is a program where from application and you sending in your application to you getting funding is about 8 weeks, and you get 90% of the funding for the grant on day one. So if you have to fund suppliers, etc., you're not waiting to the end of a quarter and submitting a report and waiting for the money to come in. So it's great for cash flow. So FAST is really interesting competition. It's won quite a few awards as well, and it's now spreading out across government. So that's the top bit. Middle bit, scientific director for innovation. So there are four scientific directors at the National Institute of Health Research, and one of them is looking after programs. One looks after, so that's stuff. One looks after infrastructure, so that's place. One looks after the academy, so I suppose that's people, and one looks after innovation, which is me. And that's where I try to intersect with all industry. There's been a lot of work as well with clinical trials, working with pharma, trying to get the time for clinical trials down as well. So, a lot of industry work, a lot of innovation work, and that's the government bit. So the last ring, probably the more interesting one for us to have discussions about. Worked in medtech, pharma, diagnostic, and dental businesses. And during my career working in the health tech industry, let's call it that as a sort of catch-all, lived and worked in the US, France, Italy, Switzerland, and Belgium as well, and did two IPOs in my career, one in the US and one in the UK, and chaired quite a few companies. In the last 3 years, I've sold off two of those companies. So taken all things through, right from innovation and startup and idea and concept, all the way through to uh, selling them onto better providers. And then right at the bottom, raised a lot of funds. So there's an interesting blend there of understanding the academic side and where stuff comes out of, understanding as well that stuff comes out of the clinical side, blending that with how stuff gets funded and then the overall business look. So they're the bona fides that I was going to talk to you about. The first section we were going to talk after that is about what the NIHR is, the National Institute of Health, and we also forget the care research as well. Doesn't sort of fit into the acronym NIHR. We should get a little C in there somewhere, but we're not going to change logos, too much taxpayers' money. NIHR, the mission of the NIHR is we are the health and social care research arm, and the mission is we drive life-changing research for the health and wealth of our society. You would think something like the National Institute of Health Research would just be focused on helping improve health. But when the new administration came in on July 4th, 2024, one of the the defining things that was said to us right at the very beginning as the new ministers, secretary of states all walked into the building to rounds of applause was that we were also charged with looking after the wealth of society. And this comes from a lot of the research that's gone on before, looking at if you want to see how healthy somebody is, one of the biggest social determinants is actually how wealthy they are. And also you can look and see the other way around, which is you can determine how wealthy people are by looking at their health. Talking to some people in Sheffield, the Sheffield teaching hospitals, they have something called their number 57 bus line. And the number 57 bus line goes all the way from the southern southwest corner of Sheffield, which is approaching the Derbyshire Dales, the Peaks, Dore, Totley, and it runs all the way to the Northern General Hospital. And it runs through areas, and the average life expectancy, healthy life expectancy, on the number 57 bus route is about 5 years difference. That's because people are less wealthy, less healthy, less healthy, less wealthy. And it's really stark. And some people have done research as well on looking at the metro in Newcastle, and they found similar things as well. The biggest determinant for your wealth, your health, is your wealth. We did a piece of work as well in Birmingham, my area, and we looked and compared cancer outcomes for people in Birmingham versus people in leafy Oxford, about 55 miles away. Gail knows that. And we looked at 5 year survival rates of people with bowel cancer in Birmingham versus people who are in Oxford. And it's about 5 percentage points difference, not 5% difference, 5 percentage points difference. So when we think about a lot of the research we're doing in the NIHR, we try to center research, and when I say research, I mean investing as well in SMEs, investing in innovation. A lot of the research we do, we try to put at the place where the research is needed. We did a maternal health inequalities challenge, and we put £50 million into that challenge about a year ago. And it was looking at how can women and children have such difference in survival rates, mortality, morbidity across the country, and how can we fund research to identify it? And if you were an expectant mother, the best place to be an expectant mother is in the southeast of England, Oxford, Cambridge, and London, but most parts of London. The worst place was Blackpool. Yet most of the research to look at maternal health inequalities was taking place in the southeast, the greater southeast. Totally the wrong place. It's a similar sort of thing for mental health as well. If you are wanting to research mental health, the places you really need to go to are the northwest and the southwest of this country. That's where it's most prevalent. But all the research takes place in shiny buildings and a lot of the time in London. So as we look at driving the NIHR, and one of the key tenets that goes through it is we want to move research to where the research is needed because we're charged with driving the health and wealth of society. So that's the evangelizing bit. We are the health and social care research arm of the nation. We're funded by the public. It was set up 20 years ago because it's our 20-year anniversary this year. We were set up 20 years ago, and the idea was to carve out 1% of the NHS budget and use that to look at ways of doing things better and differently. At that time, the challenges were similar, but not as prevalent as today. We were starting to see aging society, multiple morbidities, chronic diseases. We'd started to see things like diabetes in the population. We had some other trends as well. We had about 45% of the population was smoking at that time, and now it's down to about 17 to 19% of adult smoking. So there's also been some prevailing trends the other way. But we target research where it's needed most and will make the biggest difference. And a lot of what we look at is place, and we look at skills. And a lot of time when we look at place, we see that the skills of people, we don't have the right skills of people, so we have to build capacity, which means education and training. So we try to match those two together. So we try to look at everything from med devices to diagnostics to new drugs. And it's about creating real improvements to real lives, which creates those real economic benefits too. A sidebar is I had a conversation with James O'Shaughnessy, Lord O'Shaughnessy, and we were going back on a train from somewhere. We were musing about the 800,000 people who'd left the workforce just after COVID. So 800,000 people have not gone back to full-time employment for various reasons. We dug into it, and the two major reasons were there's a musculoskeletal component, there's a mental health component. But then we worked out what would be the economics if those people if they wanted to go back to work, if they did go back into the workforce. And we calculated that it would contribute about 20 to 25 billion to the economy if they were able to go back. And some of the reasons why they couldn't go back is because of the capabilities and facilities were not there for them to do so. And a lot of the time it was down to making sure we had the right research. When you look at the amount of people who couldn't go back to work because of mental health issues, anxiety, depression, if we'd had innovations which could help treat them maybe in their own home, maybe give them more frequent interventions rather than requiring them to go to a shiny hospital somewhere, we may be able to help them. So we need to do more research on that. So we can see the real linkage there between the benefits you get from the research that you deliver. And it's true, every pound invested generates about £13 back. And if you're an investor thinking about this, and you saw the cost of raising government funds, government bonds, was very, very low, right? 3.5% you're paying a government bond. You would want to invest a lot more into healthcare research because it generates such a return back for the economy. And one of my areas I'm looking at right now is working out how we can get more funds invested into research. The I4I program, as an example, we've managed to double that and double the amount of money we spend on I4I program in the past 3 years now. So we really are trying to do that. And we recognize that if we make this a really good place for doing research, we're going to attract billions in investment. People like Moderna will want to come here, set up their manufacturing plant in Harwell, which I saw last week. And it will bring in new therapies and new innovations. Places which are research intensive, innovation intensive, have better outcomes for patients, have better staff retention. So it just makes this whole virtual circle. And we've got a good workforce here. We're not innovation shy in this country. We do create lots of innovations. We do create lots of new ways of doing things. Not always so good at scaling them up. I think we get to a certain point and then we sort of start hit some blockers. But that's why some of the programs we put in place are. So if you want to interact with the NIHR, you need to hit in four areas really. Can you show whatever you're looking at really does have an impact on lives? Will it impact lives? Will it impact wealth? Will it impact quality of life? If you can show that, then that's really impact, and we're interested. I talked about those maternal health inequalities, and one of my personal beefs is that we need to get more and more people involved in research, but we need to make sure it's not pockets of research, and that the people who can access that research and take part in the research, thinking back to my number 57 bus analogy, are all of those people. All the people can have access and they have equity of access. And it shouldn't be the preserver people who look like me just to get access to research. And the inclusion works two ways. Inclusion works for people wanting to be part of research, but also in terms of including researchers as well, so that we have a real drive so that the same old researchers don't get the same money. And we are looking for new people with new ideas, and we want to include them in funding. Third I is investment. Our research has enabled people to save money. Some of our research has been targeted at working out what we don't need to do as opposed to what we need to do more of. We worked out looking at radiotherapy that you didn't need to have that many doses of radiotherapy, which saves people's times, make people's lives better, saves money as well. So some of the research is not additive, it's subtractive, which is good. And we want to attract investment. We want people like BioNTech and Moderna to come here. We want lots and lots of other med tech, life tech, dental, diagnostics companies to set up here because it drives their health and wealth. The last I is innovation, which is probably more your area. We have a good reputation for life sciences. We have a good reputation, but it's fairly concentrated. If you think about pharma in the UK, you can name two companies who instantly come to mind, but you probably don't know the next 10 who are following behind in terms of people like Bicycle Therapeutics, Autolus, etc. You wouldn't be able to point to them. We do hyper concentrate, and it's the same in medtech as well. We hyper concentrate into a few companies. You can go Smith, so you can Smith and Nephew, and you know what the medtech leaders are, but then the long tail of it behind is less prevalent. So we want to really push and see whether we can uncover the next lot. So these are four areas you need to hit. Just diving into each of these. We want to change the lives and improve the quality of life. We're not really interested in working out just how to extend life so I can spend another 2 years in rehab somewhere or in a care home. We want to improve quality of life, so people's active life, so they can live longer, happier lives. And that's why we also need to address health challenges, but also social care challenges. We're really interested in things, innovation around public health, social care. But at the end of the day, we want to find out what works and what doesn't work, what interventions work, what interventions don't work. We want to eliminate the ones that don't work very quickly. And we'd love people to live healthier, happier lives. The NHS was set up in its foundation years because there was inequities in health access and people couldn't get access to healthcare when they needed it, even though the challenges then were different. But I think nobody could get away from the fact we want people to live healthier and happier lives. There's nothing too wrong in that. Examples of impact. Last month, we recruited 88,000 people onto clinical trials, clinical research. That's just slightly shy of a Wembley a month. We recruit into, if you're a football fan, we recruit into research, which is, if you think about it, it's phenomenal how many people are actually taking part in research in this country. We have a real participatory population who wants to take part. We have about 5,000 studies in flight at the moment, and we're usually first to recruit people. Latest example is we ran a norovirus vaccine study, and the the manufacturer wanted to recruit about 5,000 people across the world. We recruited 2,500 people, and we recruited them very quickly in the norovirus um, peak. There's a peak when norovirus is very prevalent. If you don't recruit in the peak, recruiting takes a long time. So we really pushed out the boat, and we did a phenomenal job. When we turn our hands to it, we can really have impact. And those 2,500 people who had the norovirus vaccine, if it works, then they'll be protected as well. So there's spin on benefits from being involved in research. I was with the military medics yesterday, and we were talking about some of their challenges, particularly in the global situation. We talked about TXA, tranexamic acid, and this is used to control bleeding. We did a lot of the research on tranexamic acid. It's now standard of care in a lot of places. And we found that by using tranexamic acid in people with mild and moderate traumatic head injury, we can reduce the deaths in that group of people by about 20%. And you go, what? That's 400 lives. It's 400 lives. It's 544 million. They're the bare numbers. But if you think about it, if we can save 400 lives, just think about their partners, maybe their children, maybe their parents. You think about how many lives are impacted by this one piece of research. 2 in 10 trauma deaths could be prevented by giving this treatment within 3 hours. Now, 90% of them receive it. So we've really driven down the research. We've done the research. We've found out the benefit. We've done good quality research. It has an impact. And now we put it into standard of care. Let's talk about the next one, which is inclusion. Because we're funded by the public, we work for everybody in society. That's our aim. We want to look at all health and care needs. Our prime aim is we really focused on looking at health inequalities. We don't want to have a polarized health situation with the haves and have-nots. We want to try and include as many people as possible. And there's some real challenges. We are a mixed society of people from different backgrounds and different cultures, different beliefs, and they all spill over into how we think about healthcare. But our job is not to try and change those. Our job is to make healthcare available so those people can be included in that research. And we want to make sure underrepresented communities can find it easier to take part in trials. Example there is we were trying to identify people with undiagnosed hypertension, and undiagnosed hypertension it's primarily sorry it's the majority of people are male, so we had to try and find a place where we could go to that people who wouldn't ordinarily be concerned about their blood pressure or even check their blood pressure would go to. So we went to West Bromwich Albion, and we set up a tent, actually a caravan outside West Bromwich Albion, just before the burger vans. And we just offered people a free blood pressure check. Got there nice and early, did a lot of people before kickoff, did a lot of people at halftime, people stayed on afterwards. We found some severe cases of undiagnosed hypertension that required immediate treatment. Now that's sort of us, NIHR, going out to communities to try to get people involved in trials and research is what we're all about in terms of inclusion. We are trying to get people more involved. We have about 700,000 people now registered for something called Be Part of Research. These are people who have an interest in research and want to be included in it and involved in it. And we are trying to get more and more people who are interested in research, either for themselves or their family, registered so that when the trial comes along, we can instantly say to them, do you want to be part of this? And I've been on the other side of it because I'm registered for Be Part of Research. And somebody said, well, we've got a flu study taking part here. Would you like to be part of it? From the triggering of the trial to me getting a message on my phone and saying, would you want to be part of the trial, was less than 24 hours, which is great because all these people are known. We know their ages, we know their demographics, we know where they are. We can see a lot of the information which they've allowed us to gather, and we can include them in research. So that's a really interesting network. So In terms of innovation, we have a great. Did I miss one out there? No, I didn't. Okay. Um, we do a lot of research, and probably this is an area which is more interesting to you. We do a lot of research. We have a great reputation for life science innovation. We create a lot of biomed graduates. We do we create a lot of nursing and nurse researchers. We have a lot of the resources to do the research underlying it. And in terms of innovation, we have lots of people who take part in our education, who are part of our research community. There's over 3,000 people currently who have research career development grants. We realize that if we wanted to research and invest, we have to have people to be able to do that research. They have to have the skills necessary to do it. So we really are pushing these career development awards. Oh, and a couple of examples. You might have seen this. This is one of the inventions or innovations that we funded early on. Somebody said to us, it's really hard to do diagnosis for esophageal cancer. We have to stick a tube down somebody's throat and have them mildly sedated while we do it. They have to come into a nice shiny hospital to have it done. And it takes quite a long time. Is there another way of doing it? And the guys at this innovation, they said, well, why don't we just have a structure on a string, get people to swallow it, we pull it back, we retrieve the cells, we send them off. And we go, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. So Cytosponge guys are really smart. It saves money because it's a lot less expensive than endoscopy. It saves time. It enables you to do, I see there's a chemist now offering this service. I think it's called Boots. I think you can go in there and select a chemist. You can actually have this test done there and then. So you don't have to have it done in a nice shiny hospital. It picks up 10 times more cases compared to the precursor, the old test. So we diagnose more, better quality of life. We diagnose earlier, so if people need treatment, they can get treatment earlier, the outcomes are better. It costs less, it's more efficient, and it's more available to people as well. So this is an idea of the innovations we love. Another innovation, ignore the picture there. Another innovation was we funded somebody who looked at an AI stethoscope, a stethoscope that's able not only just to listen to your heartbeat and rhythm, but also to pick up some of the conditions, underlying conditions like AF. And this stethoscope, using AI, does it. We're also looking at trialing AI there's a press release coming out fairly soon about the first results of trialing AI in looking at breast cancer mammographies. And the results, when the results do come out, you'll see that AI performed extremely well. And it's performing extremely well with a stethoscope. So if you can link AI into some innovation, that's extra because that's where the future is. Investment, we get lots of return and money. As I said, it's £13 for every pound we put into healthcare. So if you were investing your money, this was a good place. There isn't a place for you to invest because you're taxpayers. But we do help, and the health and care business, we help people, but we also help jobs as well. We support thousands of jobs as NIHR. And when you think the overlying aim is the health and wealth of the nation, you can see exactly where we're going. Just want to that number down the bottom left there, we recruited 39,000 people to commercial studies. That number is going to be more like 80,000 this year, just because I know that just on that one study, we recruited 2,500 people. Success stories, I'll give you one. There was a company called Organox, which we funded a few years ago. I think NIHR funding into this, there was 3 grants we funded for a total of £2.4 million we funded very early on as the company needed to develop a technology, look at how it would be deployed, look at how it would be used in real life situations. It was a company founded by a guy out of Oxford, Dr. Peter Friend, who came to us with the idea. A lot of people went, that sounds a bit far-fetched, but it was one of those ones where you go, yeah, this sounds interesting. We should take a punt on this one and help them. And that's what NIHR does. It has a portfolio of things, and some are really risky and some are a lot safer, but it's a portfolio that gives it the strength. We used the research, or Peter used the research to prove that his technology had benefits. He was able to show that we could use more livers to do liver transplants. So people who are requiring liver transplant, really seriously ill. There are people who can't access livers, a lot of it because the donor pool of livers is not big enough. Peter's technology made more of them available, which is just phenomenal. I can see this going into probably into kidney as well and some other organs. Well, his company was bought out by about for about 1.5 billion. So what's that in dollar? 1.2 billion pounds, and is acquired by a company called Terumo, so a Japanese company. And the Japanese company invested the 1.2 billion, so that money flows back into the UK, which is great. So for my 2 and a bit million, we get a nice return to the economy, not to NIHR, but to the economy of about 1.2 billion. So that is really just shows the leverage that we can get and how having a portfolio and picking some winners can really be interesting. Okay, so that's what we are. Flip across to the next bit, which is 2026. Why am I showing Graham Hill here? Because he lives 2 doors away from me, or he lived 2 doors away from me. I live at number 28. He lived at number 32. So he was in the garden a lot of the time. He also had very fast cars and made a lot of noise outside. So NIHR, what do we do? We've got in sort of three bits. We talked about place, we talked about programs, we talked about people. We're investing a lot of money into the health tech space, things like the HealthTech research collaboratives, which is run by the network actually is run by Wendy Tyndale out of Sheffield. But the HealthTech research collaboratives all look at health tech and have a different slice of it, whether they're looking at diagnostics, whether they're looking at AI. They all have their little centers. They're a great place to network into. We can give you some contacts at the end of people to speak to. We talked about Eye for Eye, the PDA. We talked about fast grants as well. So there are lots of funding schemes available. If you're an industry and you want to access and find out what's going on, one of the things we've changed at NIHR is we try to make one gateway for people from industry to get hold of us and talk to us. And we you to go to industry@nihr.ac.uk, and your inquiry will be filtered through by the team there. In terms of infrastructure, there's lots of places you can go to depending what type of innovation or technology you're looking at. There are places which do experimental cancer. There are places that do patient safety. We talked about health tech research. The biomedical research centers are our biggest investment that we make. But we also have allied to that the applied research collaborations. So we do the basic research, and then we also have places where you can test it out in real life. And the ARCs, they intersect a lot with the HINs, Health Innovation Networks, with the NHS to try and get innovations tested. Quick drink of coffee. So there's a lot of research places. Maps are on the NIHR website if you need to find places. It's best if you're local, if you're down in Exeter, go and speak to the Southwest Peninsula people, and they can help put you in touch with the right people. It's fairly the wiring within NIHR is you don't want to look at it, but it's there and the connections can be made. 2026. I'll go through these, try and take a minute on each one. We talked about these challenges, and our challenges that we sort of focus a lot of energy onto, we put about 50 million pounds into a challenge and we pick a theme. So the thematic challenges. The first one was maternal health inequalities. If you remember my Blackpool Oxford comparison. The second one, which is about to go live, is in terms of CVD inequalities, cardiovascular disease. We're really interested in discovering those undiagnosed hypertension, undiagnosed high cholesterol. If you're thinking about the major killers and some of the indicators for that, if you can work out what those are and who has those and start treating them early, the outcomes over time, it just fits in with Wes Streeting's agenda of moving from treating people and dealing with the consequences of ill health to preventing. And if we can start diagnosing people earlier with hypertension and then tracking them, or high cholesterol and then moderating and intervening, then you get better outcomes. The third challenge, and I'm still working this one up, so anybody who's working in the field of respiratory asthma, feel free to reach out. I'm trying to work out a challenge in terms of childhood asthma. We have the highest rate of asthma in children in Western Europe, without a doubt. The causes, well, we can point to quite a few of them in terms of demographics, social, health, etc. But we're really after things like trying to work out how we can link looking at weather and air. There's been a real interest as well from some of the mayors, the regional mayors, to sponsor this type of research. So watch out for something on childhood asthma. We're working a lot with collaboration. So if you're interested in health of women, we've got a collaboration going with India. If you're interested in aging society, collaboration with Japan. We're working with Singapore on digital health. We're working with Korea in terms of digital enabled trials. So if any of those are your bag, these are all collaborations with funding and working with researchers. So if you tick into any of those, once again, reach out. Collaborations, we work a lot with charities, people like BHF, Asthma and Lung UK, working with on the respiratory challenge, BHF on the cardiovascular challenge. But also we work on other areas as well. I put TBI, traumatic brain injury, stroke, acquired brain injury, stroke, concussion, stroke sports. Did a lot of work there, and we want to collaborate. So we're working with the FA, with Rugby UK, horse racing, British Boxing Board. We're working a lot with the sports people as well, trying to work out some of the indicators and markers. So we do a lot of collaborations. Something which is out there, which not a lot of SMEs tap into, is we have a facility called the Horizon Scanning Stroke Innovation Observatory. This is an NIHR funded group based up in Newcastle, and they scan the horizon, looking at all sorts of evidence to try and work out what trends are and what the dynamics are of various innovations, interventions. So they take a long-term look. They will scan everything from industry quarterly reporting of pharma companies all the way through to people publishing things, and they will scan the whole world, and they will be able to they can identify trends, up and coming trends. Right now, they're looking with me at quantum sensing. We have done work on artificial intelligence, and they've got some great reports, and they're a good resource to tap into. A lot of their policy, sorry, a lot of their reports are available online as well. If you go to the Innovation Observatory, Horizon Scanning Center, but they also, if you're in the medicine side as well, you can find out a lot about medicines, how medicines are used, what medicines are being trialed, what's coming along. The worst thing to do is come up with some sort of innovation and then realize that in about 2 years' time, there's going to be a medicine which gets totally rid of that innovation in the first place. So that's a facility available to people. Innovation Catalyst. This is something that's in the life science sector plan, as well as looking at the inequalities challenges. We've also got this thing called Innovation Catalyst, where people can on-ramp onto a funding scheme. And if you get onto the Innovation Catalyst, one of the complaints I heard a lot from innovators is they get a certain pot of funding, but then they have to finish that funding and finish the project. Then there's a gap before they can apply for the next lot of funding. So we wanted a seamless handoff. So once you're on the Innovation Catalyst and you've got your first bit of funding, as you're coming towards the end of your program, we start to work out what the next bit of funding is, as long as you have hit the milestones you said you were going to hit. So if you deliver, then the quid pro quo is that we will then work out which is the next bit of NIHR funding that you need to access. And the on-ramps are, we're going to hold some themed competitions where you can get onto the Innovation Catalyst. We're also taking some of the innovations that come out of IDAP as well and dropping those onto the Catalyst. And then we're also thinking about what the off-ramp looks like once you've finished with NIHR funding so that you can then go out into the wide world and raise your own money. So watch out. We're going to do some announcements in April about Innovation Catalyst. Doing a lot of work on meta science, science of science, working out how to do things. This is probably less interesting for you, but really we're looking at how we can accelerate using science, using AI, using a lot of comparisons and the tools that are available to accelerate our grant process. A lot of our grants take up to 12 months, and you've heard what we're doing with FAST. I want to make a lot of the grant programs faster, and the way to do that is by using AI. So this is going on in the background. And industry. Um, we have created a single industry contact if you're doing trials, a lady called Maria Kafali. She's our industry director for the whole of NIHR. If you want to do anything in terms of trials, it's a brilliant offer. There is a specific SME offer that she's got as well in terms of how she can help you. And we also have the tools in the background now to track if you're doing clinical trials, how it would work. If I can sort of give you one pointer how we work at pace, this was an interesting example from last week. We had the Prime Minister in China, and he was looking at the investment that the PRC were making in quantum. And he said, we should also look and try and gather what all we're doing in quantum so we can sort of consolidate it together. We realized that we were short of some of the innovations, some of the early innovations we weren't funding. Some of them, a lot of the money was going into the later innovations, but not to the early, and we hadn't created a groundswell of innovation. So from last week, Monday, we came up with the idea. We discussed a funding stream. By Friday, that funding stream is now published on the NIHR website. So from Chris Whitty, Lucy Chappell, people who tell me what to do, to having the competition live on NIHR took us 4 days. So if you want to see how things can work really fast, if we see there's a need, then this is an example of how we do it. Back to Graham and Damon. I for I. How how do we value what we do at I for I? You heard that I talked to you about Organox, and I said Organox, they returned back to the economy about 1.2 billion pounds in terms of funds flowing from Japan to the economy. Over the lifetime of I for I, I've only ever spent about 300 million. So just that one thing we picked effectively covers it. And I know that the money doesn't flow into the same pot, but I do know that that money comes into the UK economy, which can then fund UK taxes, it can fund UK employees. But there's some other metrics as well for the I for I program. The IPOs we've done, yes, great. The number of participants in clinical studies, nearly 70,000, is more like 75,000 now. So there's lots and lots of collaborations, lots and lots of studies going on there, lots of jobs saved. So it really is an interesting program. It gets lots of leverage. I'm going to whip you through some of the lessons I've learned and apologize for the pictures in advance. I'm going to quickly go through the landscape, something called Chasing the Dragon. My Baby is Beautiful. These are not the titles for albums, just so you know. Founding, Managing, Follow the Money, and what successful applicants look like. So I think landscape, I'd love to say the funding landscape is like Constable and Haywain, peaceful and idyllic. But what we're talking about here with the landscape is you're talking about government money, which is essentially free money. So do not be shocked that the success rates for free money are low. Some of the programs run 10 to 15% success rates. The I for I program right now is running between 5 and 10% success rate. So that if you apply and if you get a no, it's not a no because we don't like what you're doing, but there are other things which are better. The most, if I was running my AI engine and saying, what are the characteristics of people who are successful in things like I for I? Well, the most successful applicants are those who understand what the process looks like. A lot of successful applicants have actually been on panels as well and given us their time and they can see the other end of the process. So they know what to expect and they don't go in blind. Most successful applicants have asked at least 3 times for funding. So if you get in there and you do the work and you get a no, the best thing I can suggest to you is that you look through that feedback and you make it into bullet points. And when you go for the next application, because the people will probably be the same on the panel, go through and make sure you've answered all those bullet points. I've seen applications come through where people haven't answered the bullet points, and you just look, and the panel will look around the room and say, "We've seen this before. What was the issue? Oh, it was this. Ah, guess what? It's the same issue. You've not answered it." So most successful applicants participate and also listen. There is there's a change in the environment of funding as well, which is putting more pressure on the funding. Some of the funding organizations, like UKRI, have made comments about how they're funding things. In some areas, like the Biomedical Catalyst, that hasn't run for a while. It's now coming back. So there's been a gap. Some people, like Wellcome, are funding a lot of their LEAP programs as opposed to their individual programs. So quite a few funders have stepped away, which means that there's more pressure in terms of NIHR funding. That is why the success rates are going down, because I could put probably 4 times as much money into I for I as we do right now. And we'd probably just about get back to where we were before. It's just to give you an example, when I took over looking after I for I, the average number of applicants to a round was about 65. We closed a round a few weeks ago, and it was 363 applicants. And there's a lot of desire for the money, but there's also a lot of demand. And that was quite subtle, wasn't it? I think we changed there from Constable's Haywain to munches the scream. Um, there's a stage of funding change as well that because we are where we are politically, there's a desire to show more impact from a lot of the innovations we fund. So instead of funding a lot of basic early research, there's been a change in the funding as well, so that we're funding things which are closer to market and are closer to impact. So that's to be aware of. Chasing the dragon. Um, a lot of companies, and it's very obvious that a lot of companies are reliant on grants, and that's not a sustainable model. If you come to us and your model is, well, next, or your application says, well, the next thing after I finish this grant is I'm going to look for another grant and then another grant, we'll slightly look sideways at you and go, really? Grants enabling more grants are probably not as productive as grants enabling maybe raising money privately, raising other funds, be that equity or be that debt. You really need to drive and think about how you're going to co-fund this, what the off-ramp looks like. Because the off-ramp to adoption, the off-ramp to commercialization, you have to have that clear in your mind. Not every innovation that's created has to be sold, commercially sold. It can be adopted within the NHS and you can get benefits that way. But you have to think about what that looks like. How, if you are going to have a service, how you're going to fund that service going forward. We're really conscious as well, and we do see if people come in and they double dip and they apply for the same thing in multiple parts at UKRI or whatever, we see that it's linked up. And we also see a lot of, and we will identify it fairly quickly if you're trying to double costs. So you put the 90% of the CEO's cost into one grant and then put another grant in for 90% of the CEO's cost. We're going to see it. Yes, very pretty. I think the best thing about grant funding is if you're going to take it on with the aim of either making it work quick or failing fast. And if it doesn't work, just stop it. A lot of reasons why people fail is because they just don't understand where they sit in the market. And they're very, very focused on their baby, even if it's ugly like this. They're very, very focused on their baby. And they don't see that everybody else walking down the street's also got babies as well. And they don't see how they sit. We will see that, and that'll be a reason not to fund your beautiful baby. The other reason as well, I sat on a panel once where we looked at five troponin assays, and really, if you're unaware that there's research going on in the same area as you, and you're going into a very competitive space, you better be really good. You better have something really spectacular. Otherwise, you're just going to get lost in the noise and you're not going to get funded. The other reason why people think they've got a beautiful baby and it's not is because they haven't realized how it sits into the political radar. Just read what Wes is saying in terms of treatment to prevention, hospital to community, analog to digital, major killers, stroke, CVD, cancer, um, neurodegeneration, mental health. They're his big things. If you fit into those, you've got an instant, oh, that's a boost up. If you're talking about something outside of that, which doesn't fit his agenda, then there's less chance of getting funded. And if you certainly have a solution in search of a need, and you go, oh, I've got something here. And I've seen this in so many innovations. They have a wonderful technology and then they keep going round and round and round the houses trying to work out what's the best need for it. Do it the other way around. Talk to customers, work out what the need is, work out from the users, work out from patients what their need is, and then think about your solution. Don't think about it the other way. Done a lot of founding versus managing. And as you, when you're putting your application in, I would always think about how you're going to change the organization. What are your thoughts on how this organization will evolve? Because if you're a founder, eventually there are very few founders that take it all the way through to $1 billion business. There's a log scale of management and skills you need at different stages, whether you're a million turnover, whether you're 10 million turnover, 100 million turnover. There's a log scale of change. And you realize that what you're moving from is your skills in terms of ideation are not the same as skills of adoption. And you need to make sure that your team reflects that. You need to build that team so it reflects the skills that you will need as you go along the journey. Do not expect an academic to understand how commercialization is going to work or regulatory pathways, etc. You need to build, you need to have the skills to get the regulatory approval and reimbursement approval. You also need to be aware enough that we will ask those questions. And the path to external funding, that's the path you need to identify as well. If this works, what next? The FAST grant application has three questions. What is this thing? Um, what does it do differently and the impact? And then if this all works, what will you do next? And it's that what will you do next, which is a really important one. Following the money, the packing cases are there for a reason. Um, you have to think about who the end user is. I'll come back to packing cases. Always think about who the end user of your thing is going to be. You always have to work out who's going to pay for this. What are they using now? What are they going to stop using? And then also think about if my thing takes off, what will an incumbent do? Because there's usually somebody doing something anyway right now, and you've got to work that out strategically. And will this require change in investment? And that comes to the cases here. The cases here are down in the basement of a London hospital. I saw some packing cases, not these ones, but very similar to this. And I asked what's inside of them, and they said it's a linear accelerator. This is about $3-4 million worth of kit sitting there in a box. And I said, well, why is it in the box and not out of the box? And they said, oh, we've got it, but to use it, we're going to have to change the whole basement of this hospital so we can install the equipment, and we don't have the funds to do it. So as you're thinking about your innovation, also think about whether it's going to require changes and can you show the value. Successful applications, they recognize about health and wealth. Successful applications, when they come to us, showcase the team. This is not an N of one. They showcase the whole team. I've seen so many applications where people come in and it's one guy, one dude talking, and that's just not good. People who are aware of their abilities and skill gaps and understand how they're going to fill those gaps will be successful. People engage with patients will be successful. But they've also got their innovation and it clearly matches where the government priorities are. The government give us the money to play with. They give us a 1.7 billion a year. They give us that to spend on their priorities. So if you want to get access to the funds, you have to do the same. You have to know where the money takes you.